No one is afraid of monsters anymore. The wind whistled through the cracks in the walls and windows, making his bones ache. While the cold and dampness of the decaying castle never bothered him before, tonight was a complete exception. He felt the muscles in his shoulders crackle and pop as he raised himself up. His knees seemed to lock and did not want to feel the strain on his body as he tried to get out of his sleeping position. The coffin just isn't the same anymore, he thought to himself. After a few heartfelt tries, he managed to extract himself from the mahogany coffin with the silk lining and the inch of soil that lay at the bottom. Brushing off the dirt from his back, he proceeded to the wardrobe to get dressed. He had often wondered what people would think if they knew he slept in the nude. Not the kind of image for a person to have of the once most famous of all vampires. As instructed, the candles around the room had been lit, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The painting of his once great countenance hung above a brightly glowing fireplace. He remembered sitting for the artist just before he had ordered his execution. It wasn't that the painting was bad. It was the fact that the bloodlust which had held him in life had taken over. On a table by the coffin was a glass of blood, donated by some poor mortal at a blood bank. He lifted the glass to his lips and sipped. "Damn O positive," he muttered. Looking out the window over the fields, he fell into a state of melancholia. The moon shone bright over the mountains and the forbidding forest. Wolves howled into the night, making him think of the many times that he himself had run with them, hunting the life-giving flesh of the townspeople. He thought of the horror that the mortals felt after learning that their fate was sealed and they were merely food. How he longed for the days and nights of screaming victims as their bodies were impaled on giant stakes. Music to my ears. As he finished his meals and drank the brandy that had come from parts unknown, but well worth its weight in gold.
"Master, the others are waiting."
He turned towards the voice of his most trusted servant. "Tell them I shall be down shortly," he said, his gaze wandering towards a lone wolf that was foraging for something to eat. He heard the door creak close. He sighed heavily. "This may very well be the end of all of us," he thought. The grand hall was brightly lit by the candles. The large ornate fireplace was ablaze. To the average person, it would seem like a warm place from a time that was no longer remembered. The sadness of the room was given away by the decay of the stone walls, cracks appearing at intervals along the masonry. Dracula stood at the top of the staircase, looking down at the many faces that had come to seek refuge from the outside world. His heart had grown heavy with the burden that it now carried. As he descended, his acute hearing could pick up snatches of conversation from parts of the room, and it saddened him even more.
"I remember a time when,"
seemed to be the major topic of discussion. As he came to the last step, he stood and raised his hand, his long bony fingers shaking slightly. All the others quieted in humble silence as they awaited his word. Taking a deep breath, he began a speech that he had been rehearsing for many weeks. "My friends, the end has finally come." No one dared to speak, for they were in shock at the finality of what had been spoken by the master. "We, as creatures of the night, created from the imagination of many great people, are no longer frightening. The mortals have made fools out of us all." "Ugh," Frankenstein's monster said. Dracula looked over at the creature that a man had created from dead tissue. He thought about how sad the once great monster now looked. "Oh," the monster said again. "Spit it out already," Dracula bellowed. "Sorry, had a piece of shrimp caught in my throat," the monster said. "All I was going to say was, I don't think you are giving us credit anymore. We're still pretty frightening." Dracula slowly walked amongst the monsters and creatures that only stared at him. As he approached the monster known as Legion, for he was made from many, his eyes began to glow blood red. "How do you mean?" Dracula asked. "Well," Legion began a little apprehensively, "I thought that Boris did me quite well. Yes, in 1932. Audiences have never seen the likes of you except in their imaginations, so Boris did you well. But what about since then?" "Well," Legion began again, "there was that one movie." "Yes, Mr. De Niro gave an admirable performance. My question is, did they make audiences scared to walk alone in the streets?" Legion could only look down at his massive feet. Dracula turned to the others. "We have all been relegated to teenage garbage. You, Mummy," Dracula pointed at the monster standing in the corner, "became a mere action movie. You, Blob," again he pointed to a jelly-like substance that hung on the wall next to the bookcase, "became only a memory."
What about you?
The Wolfman said, sitting on his hind legs. "It has been the worst for me. Not only do they make vampires teenage heartthrobs, but I was relegated to a blasted cartoon."
Don't forget the television show.
Renfield said, regretting it the moment it came out.
Yes, but I have had it worse.
The Wolfman continued.
We never win. Even in the remake that Universal did, I still die. Do we ever get the girl? Only if Michael J. Fox plays us, and look at what they did with that on television.
The other monsters began to howl. "Enough! We have all been shafted by the so-called Hollywood machine. Audiences do not want monsters anymore. Stick a still camera in a room and watch a shadow go across the door, and they say that is scary," the Phantom of the Opera said. "Or run through the woods and scream, and that is supposed to be scary," the Invisible Man said, somewhere from the other side of the room, one could never be sure. Dorian Gray stood up from his chair beside the fireplace, a glass of wine clutched tightly in his hand. "We have all been made fun of. Such as, in my case, a villain in an adventure movie. My story was a classic. Do you hear me?" Dracula had always detested Dorian. He was so full of himself, which, as Dracula thought on it, was the whole point. "I mean, look what they did to me and Dr. Jekyll," Dorian said. "My friends," Dracula began again, "I believe that it is time to do something about this. We need to figure out how to scare again."
Unless you have a killer, a human killer, disembowering someone in glorious color on a 70-foot screen, nothing is going to change,
Mr. Hyde said. "Which is why I have brought you all here to my home, so that we may try to figure out what to do about this situation." Situation? This is more than just a situation. It is a catastrophe, Legion said. "Unless you want to go on some killing spree, I don't know what else we could possibly do." The rest were in total agreement. There was a low roar from somewhere outside the castle that shook the walls slightly. A new crack appeared above the fireplace, and Dracula looked over at Renfield. "I believe," Dracula said to the cowering man, "that your pet is requiring some sustenance."
Yes, master. I will attend to it.
Renfield said as he made his way towards the kitchen.
Why did you ever let him bring that?
Legion started to ask. Dracula raised his hand to silence the monster.
Please don't start that again. He wanted a pet, so I was persuaded to let him have one. What was wrong with a rat or a nice juicy spider?
Legion asked.
He said that it was cute and would not cause any problems.
Legion looked credulous as he said,
A puppy is cute. A kitten is cute. Godzilla is not cute.
Dracula could only sigh. Another roar was heard from outside as yet another crack appeared in the ceiling. Bits of stone and dirt fell onto Dracula's shoulder. He sighed again.
Any more like that, the whole castle might fall in,
Legion said. Dracula shook his head as he brushed off the debris.
Our problem still exists, and there seems to be no solution. How do we get the movie going public to be scared of us again?
I don't think that is possible, Drac,
Moira said. Dracula gave the witch an icy stare.
She knows how much I hate to be called by that shortened version of my once proud name,
he thought.
And yet she insists.
Hey, even witches have had a bad time of it.
Moira continued.
Look at Sabrina, and that one with Bette Midler of all of those comedians. It seems that if you are going to do a monster movie, it has to happen in space.
The alien only looked at her.
And even those guys are having it rough. What with battling predators and nonsense like that.
The alien hung its head, spearing a cockroach with its extended teeth.
Face it, Drac. No one is scared of monsters anymore. We have been relegated to cartoons and teen comedies and nonsense. Audiences don't really get into ghosts anymore.
Yes, but look how much money those things have made. 3 sequels? Really? Seriously? The mummy said. It is not just about the money. It is the principle. We were once heralded as the greatest movie monsters of all time. Sequel after sequel was churned out, and the mortals ate it all up, screaming, afraid to go to sleep at night. Not anymore. So what is the answer?
Legion asked. Dracula smiled, his teeth shining in the candlelight.
I have a rather absurd plan that just might work.
You have a meeting on Friday with Mr. King about turning his latest blockbuster into a movie. Another meeting with that new author on Tuesday, and Universal wants to know when to expect the treatment for Vampires Love Blood.
James Smithy looked up at his secretary and smiled.
It's called Vampires Bloodlust, and I think it's gonna be a blockbuster.
Well, it better be, or we could all be looking for work,
Sandy told him. Sandy Winchester was the best, he thought to himself. A hard worker, good-looking, and knew a good script just by reading the title. Somehow she had a sixth sense about what would play well to an audience of prepubescents and teenagers. It was what had gotten her the job at Millhouse Productions, of which James Smithy was the current CEO.
I take it you don't think it's a good story?
He asked. She wrinkled her nose as if someone had let go a good helping of gas.
Yeah, maybe you're right, Smithy agreed. Put in a call to Universal and tell them we're scrapping the whole thing. Besides, vampires are just too cliched right now. Anything else come across the desk?
She laid a rather large volume of paper on his desk.
It came in the mail last week, and I finally had a chance to read it last night.
Your verdict?
Well, I didn't get any sleep, if that's what you mean.
That good? I think you could call it a work in progress, but it's pretty gruesome. The author's info is on the last page. Wait until you see where it came from,
she said with a mischievous grin. James turned to the last page. After reading the address, he looked up at his most trusted employee.
Well, this has to be a joke,
he said.
No joke. I kept the package that it came in. You mean that there really is a castle somewhere in what we all know and love as Transylvania? If it's meant as a joke, it's a darn expensive one. The postage was astronomical, which is why I kept the package that it came in. And you think it's really that good? Like I said,
she said before leaving.
It kept me up all night.
As his office door silently closed, he turned and looked out over the office window, which gave him a wonderful view of the Hollywood sign up in the hills. Ah, Hollywood, he thought to himself, the land that had produced so many monsters and creatures of the night in its glorious heyday. Sadly, the only monsters that lurked under the beds at night were serial killers and mass murderers. Perhaps the script that Sandy had just laid before him would change all of that. Besides, if it was as good as she thought, it might be an interesting replacement for the picture that he had just condemned. He turned back to his desk and began to read. Romanian was not a second language to James Smithy. In fact, he did very well to use English properly. Trying to get directions to the castle was about as bad as trying to get directions in the southern part of the US of A. After 20 hours on an airplane, coach not first class, another 2 hours by train, and finally a car journey that could be construed as something out of a second-rate carnival ride, he was tired, irate, and had given serious thought to strangling the next person that smiled broadly and welcomed him to the old country, or invited him to see the museum that featured everything that you could possibly want to know about the infamous Count.
I'm just checking in,
James told the desk clerk.
Yes, Mr. Smithy. Welcome to the old country, and please don't forget to visit the museum, which is very convenient to our establishment.
Smithy eyed the pen that he was holding and wondered what it would be like to jam it into the clerk's eye.
Please, can I have my key?
He asked as politely as he could muster.
Would you like to have some dinner?
The clerk asked.
A nice bed is all that I need right now. I have an appointment in the morning at the castle, and I need to get some sleep. You must be mistaken, Mr. Smithy. There is no one at the castle, and has not been for centuries. The place is a hazard, and no one is permitted to go near it,
the clerk said, his tone very forbidding.
Well, nevertheless, I'm meeting someone there. I trust there is some form of transportation I can arrange?
He asked.
You must understand,
the clerk continued.
This is the off-season, and the festival does not begin until October. At that time, there are many tours that you can take to the castle, but for now, no one goes there. I see,
James said, regretting ever reading the script that had been sent to him.
Can I have my key now?
The clerk handed him an old-fashioned regular run-of-the-mill key. Apparently the 21st century had not yet come to this part of the world.
There is free Wi-Fi available if you so desire, Mr. Smithy. And would you like a wake-up call?
Or perhaps a small part of the new world had infected the old, he thought.
Get me up at 7, and I'll ring later for something to eat. The dining room closes at 9,
the clerk said with a smile. Smithy picked up his bag and made his way to the room on the second floor of the old building. While the room was nicely decorated, the mattress was harder than any rock he had ever slept on. By the time the so-called wake-up call had come, he realized that he had only gotten about 20 minutes of sleep.
I thought I told you 7 for a wake-up call,
he growled into the phone.
I'm sorry, sir, but I do have other duties to attend to. We do have other guests that require my attention, and I cannot cater to the needs of everyone. Again, I do apologize. The dining room closes for breakfast at 9. Have a nice day.
This had not been the same clerk from last night. Managing to make his way to the small room that had been set up for breakfast, he gulped down a strong cup of coffee.
This has come for you,
a waiter said, handing him a folded note. Optimism did not enter into his mind as he read the note, for it told him that at sundown, which was around 9 p.m., a coach would fetch him and take him to the castle to meet the author of the script. Great, he thought. So much for an early morning meeting. What could one do for the next 12 hours in this godforsaken...
Have you seen the museum?
The waiter asked.
Why the hell not?
At precisely 9 in the evening, a car pulled up to the entrance of the hotel where Smithy waited. A gaunt fellow dressed in clothes from the 18th century opened the door for him without a word. Smithy wasn't quite sure, but he thought that the man had several scars and what looked like a bolt in the side of his neck. Shaking off the vision, he climbed in. The ride was bumpy, and Smithy spent most of it trying to hold down every meal that he had eaten in the last 10 years. With every bump of the car, his stomach lurched a little more, threatening to heave up whatever contents were in it. Smithy tried not to think about it. As the car finally pulled into the open area of the castle grounds, Smithy looked out of the window at the ruins of the once grand establishment. He could see the crack of the stone mason and the decay of the grounds. If this were a location for a good old-fashioned haunted house movie, it would be almost perfect. "Sir," the driver said as he opened the door for Smithy. Smithy climbed out and walked up to the massive door. Just before knocking, he turned to ask the driver if the author of the script was actually living here. But the man had vanished. He found himself standing alone in the courtyard, the moonlight casting eerie shadows onto the ground. A cold chill ran up his spine as he turned back to the door. Before he knocked, the door opened, just as Smithy thought it would, with lots of creaking. He held back the urge to laugh ominously.
Hello?
He called out. Standing about 20 feet away was a tall man, dressed in the garb of the infamous Count. "I bid you welcome," Dracula said. "Please, come quickly, go safely, and leave a little of the happiness that you bring." At some point, Smithy could not hold back any longer. His laughter filled the massive entrance hall. He began to applaud the so-called Count of the Undead. Dracula was not amused.
That, my friend,
Smithy said as he calmed down,
is the best Dracula that I have ever seen. You have everything down right to the medallion on your chest.
Dracula looked down at the family crest. Looking back, his eyes turned a blood red as anger began to boil up inside him. He could kill this little insect of a man with a stare. But then he remembered why the man had come. Smiling, Dracula said, "Please, Mr. Smithy, come this way to the banquet hall. I believe that we have some business to discuss." Smithy followed the man into the next room. Candlelight burned from every corner, and on the table was a buffet that would make the hungriest man drool. The Count poured 2 glasses of wine and offered Smithy one as he motioned him to sit down. "May this be a most profitable enterprise," the Count said, raising his glass.
I'll drink to that,
Smithy said, sipping at the wine.
Now, let's talk about this new monster that you come up with. After reading the description, I think that we could build it in a short manner of time. You don't reveal the whole thing until the very end, which is great for suspense.
Build the monster,
the Count asked.
Why, yes, sir,
Smithy said.
We have our own special effects department that could probably do this to your description, but there might have to be some changes.
Changes,
the Count barked.
Look,
Smithy began in a placating voice.
Every movie is written 3 times. Once inside your head, which is great because in there you can build anything. Then it gets rewritten because of logistics. Perhaps we can't find a suitable location to shoot. Then we have to rewrite to use what we have. In this case, the monster that you describe, and by the way, my secretary couldn't sleep a night after she read it, so kudos for that, we might have some problems making the thing. So, that would require some changes.
Dracula was not aware that anything like this would have been said to him. He had poured every ounce of energy that he had had into this project, and now his ego was slowly being deflated.
What is the 3rd time?
Dracula asked.
Well,
Smithy said.
That will be after everything is filmed. The editor will go through the script, putting the pieces of film together. There could be some points that have to be thrown out to give the movie more clarity. But hey, don't worry about all that. I really think that you have a great story and a pretty good shooting script right now. My only problem is this monster that you've described.
What is wrong with it?
Dracula asked.
Oh, nothing. Absolutely nothing,
Smithy said with a huge smile.
I think that it is the most terrifying thing that I've ever imagined. However...
What?
Well, I just don't know how well it will play on the screen.
Dracula looked down at the floor. A large growl came from outside, and plaster fell to the table.
What the hell was that?
Smithy asked, brushing bits of ceiling from his pants.
Nothing,
Dracula said absently.
It's just time to feed Igor's pet.
Why do you feed him?
Smithy asked nervously.
You have nothing to fear. I told everyone that you are off limits. They will listen to me.
And who are they?
Smithy asked, looking around the room at the strange shadows the candles were making. Dracula looked up and smiled, his pointed teeth sharper than ever. With a ghastly grin, he asked,
Would you like to see the monster?
James Smithy arched an eyebrow. It would be about a year later when the premiere of the latest monster movie hit the theaters. The reviews were quite good, and the audience seemed to love the creation of an unknown author named Alucard. Dracula, dressed in his best, had taken Legion with him to the Hollywood premiere. He had been a little disappointed when no one jumped back at his presence. Everyone seemed to only want a picture. Legion loved the attention that he was getting. A group of pretty college girls had gathered around him for a photo that wound up on Facebook.
So, what do you think?
James Smithy asked him after the showing of the movie. The 2 men, well, 1 man and 1 undead creature, stood outside the theater, waiting for the crowd to come out. The lights from the spots crossed the sky and lit up the night. The studio had spared no expense in promoting their latest project.
Let us just wait. I want to see the frightened faces, the people hurrying home to hide behind locked doors and closed windows, knowing that the fiend could still get them,
Dracula said, his eyes glowing red with excitement and lust.
What?
Smithy asked.
Our star, the monster, is in the theater right now, waiting for the right moment,
Dracula said.
You went and hired some guy to jump out of the audience. And I went out with a tingler in 1964. Damn it, you should have consulted me.
His words were cut short by the screaming coming from the theatre. Dracula smiled, only to frown again. The audience had begun laughing, cheering even. This was not the reaction the Count had wanted. As people filed out, they were smiling, talking about how great the movie was and that they would bring friends to see it. That they could not wait to own it on DVD, whatever that was, Dracula thought to himself.
No! You are supposed to be afraid, Dracula screamed at the audience.
The monster came out of the theatre, his face showing sadness and his shoulders, if you could call them that, were slumped. He slowly looked up at his creator. People were coming up behind him, slapping him on the back, if you could call it that, and praising him for such a fine performance. As the monster approached Dracula, he said,
I'm sorry. I jumped like you told me to do. I yelled and growled and threatened, and the audience, well...
What did they do? Dracula demanded to know. The monster looked down.
They laughed and applauded.
Dracula could not believe what he was hearing. He should grab the first human that walked by the two monsters, lift him above his head, and tear his throat out. Perhaps that would scare the silly fools back to reality. James Smithy had been talking with the producers in a corner of the lobby. As he left the three men standing there, he made his way back to Dracula and the monster, smiling.
We have a hit,
he told the pair.
Hey, you two look like you lost your best friend.
You would not understand,
Dracula told him.
No, you don't understand. Those men over there, the ones who put the money up for this thing, are ready to sign you and this actor here to a 3-picture deal. You hear me? We are talking sequels. Hell, a franchise will rank up there with Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th.
Dracula couldn't stand it anymore.
Come, monster. Let us go back to where we belong,
he said.
Did you say 3 pictures?
The monster asked.
Sure. And after your performance tonight, they want you to continue to play the monster, whoever you are,
Smithy said. The monster smiled. Dracula was not amused.
You must come back to the castle,
he told the monster.
Did you hear him? 3 pictures, maybe more. How can I pass that up?
The monster told his master.
Let's talk contracts,
Smithy said as he led the monster away. Dracula watched the pair as they walked towards a limo. Legion stepped up to him and put a massive arm around the Count's shoulders.
I told you,
Legion said.
No one is scared of monsters anymore. I suppose that you are right,
Dracula said.
Hey!
Smithy yelled out.
You come in. We still need a writer.
Dracula and Legion looked at each other. They may not be scared of monsters, but they sure will pay for them, Dracula said. Epilogue. The butler did it.